Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today, we continue with the latest part of the heartbreaking story of the single mother Mom Lý Hoài Ca, a journey that only grows more suffocating with every twist and turn. As you all know, in the previous episode, a shocking event unfolded. Hung's mother, while being pursued by the police, found herself with no way out. In desperation, she grabbed a child passing by on the bridge and used the poor kid as a hostage, leaving everyone around stunned in horror. In that moment, Hung, both a dutiful son and a righteous police officer, could only scream, begging his mother to let the innocent child go. But her heart was blinded by hatred. She didn't just despise the law closing in on her, she also harbored a deep grudge against Hawa, the woman Hung loved. Trembling, Hung pleaded with her to turn herself in, promising that it was her last chance for mercy, a chance to start over. But his words vanished like whispers lost in the abyss of her resentment. Before anyone could even react, Hung's mother suddenly hurled herself toward the bridge's railing. Below, the river raged violently under the night sky, as if it wanted to swallow everything whole. Hung screamed a heart-shattering cry, lunged forward, but his fellow officers restrained him. And then, all that was left was the deafening roar of the water and a suffocating silence of despair. Has Hung's mother truly ended it all beneath those freezing waters? Can Hung, a man torn between duty as a police officer and the agony of a grieving son, find the strength to endure this loss? And what of his love for Hawa Ca? After everything they've been through, will it be strong enough to survive? Stay tuned for today's episode to see the truth slowly revealed. And don't forget to leave your thoughts in the comments below, because this story is only just beginning. Staring at the scene before him, watching his mother throw herself into the raging river, Hung felt as if every ounce of strength had been ripped away. The world blurred, only the pounding of his heart and the fading image of his beloved mother sinking into the dark waters remained. After countless desperate efforts, the reconnaissance team and the mobile police force finally had no choice but to retreat. The search was temporarily called off, but no one dared to consider it the end. For now, everything was at a standstill. As for Hung, his superiors were forced to grant him a few days of leave. Not as a favor, but because they understood his spirit had reached its breaking point. Hung, once the steadfast police officer who never faltered in the face of any case, now looked like a man stripped of his very soul. When he left the station, he didn't know where to go. The vast city suddenly felt unbearably suffocating. And then, as if driven by instinct, his feet led him to Hawa Ca's doorstep. She opened the door. Seeing him there, gaunt, dark circles under his eyes, shoulders heavy with the weight of the world, her heart ached. She didn't ask questions. She simply stepped aside and let him in. In the old, familiar house that held so many memories, Hung sat down in silence, motionless like a statue. He didn't speak, but his eyes, they were fractured, filled with pain. Hawa Ca sat down beside him, gently placing her hand on his shoulder, as if to share a part of his burden. Finally, Hung spoke, his voice hoarse. "Ca, it's all my fault. I couldn't save her. I couldn't do anything." Tears streamed down Hawa Ca's face. She wrapped her arms around him and whispered through her sobs. "It's not your fault. Hung, it's not your fault." But Hung didn't respond. He only held her tighter, as if letting go would mean losing the last thing he had left. Looking into his sorrow-filled eyes, Hawa Ca felt every ounce of anger she had once harbored toward his mother dissolve. There was no more hatred, no more fear. Only a deep, aching compassion remained. "Maybe, this is all because of me," Hawa Ca whispered, trembling. "If I hadn't appeared in your life, maybe things would have been different." Hung immediately shook his head and clutched her hand. "Don't you ever say that. None of this is your fault. You're the only thing I have left now. Without you, I don't know how I'd survive." Under the faint, warm glow of the lamp, they sat together in silence, trembling as they clung to each other. No more words. Only the quiet sound of the wind outside, and the tears falling freely, as if to wash away the pain that had been buried too long. In that moment, Hawa realized she didn't just love Hung, she wanted to bear his wounds with him. And for the first time in days, Hung closed his eyes, resting his head on her shoulder. In that fragile stillness, he felt, perhaps this was the only place he could find peace. "Mother!" His scream tore through the night, so raw and agonizing that everyone around froze. Hung lunged toward the railing, but his fellow officers restrained him. He fought them with the desperation of a wounded animal, eyes bloodshot, struggling to break free and leap into the freezing river below. Under the bridge, the river churned like a bottomless abyss, black and merciless, swallowing everything in its path. The wind howled, cutting like knives. Hung slammed his fists against the railing until his knuckles bled, but he didn't care. The physical pain was nothing compared to the torment ripping his heart apart. Immediately, every available unit was mobilized. Searchlights turned the darkness into day, sweeping across the vast river. Police dogs were deployed along the banks, rescue boats roared through the waters, and the special diving team plunged into the icy current without hesitation, clinging to the faint hope of finding her. But it was all in vain. That night, the river was a monstrous beast, cold, merciless, and unyielding. It devoured everything, leaving behind only ripples in the dark. The commanding officer's voice blared through the loudspeakers. "Keep searching. Do not give up." Engines roared, water splashed violently, and shouted orders echoed across the riverbank. The tension was suffocating. Every passing minute chipped away at what little hope Hung had left. Time passed. The night faded. The sun rose weakly over the horizon, but its light brought no warmth, only revealing the exhaustion and despair etched on everyone's faces. After a sleepless night, there was no sign. No clue. No hope that Hung's mother had survived. Hung knelt at the riverbank, his hands clenched so tightly they bled. His eyes were hollow, empty, as if the river had taken everything from him. In his mind, questions spun endlessly. Is she still alive? If she is, where is she? Or, is it really over? Behind him, Hawa stood silently, her vision blurred by tears. She wanted to go to him, to lay a comforting hand on his shoulder, but the words caught in her throat, and nothing came out. Hawa sat quietly beside Hung, her hand gently holding his, as if afraid he might collapse at any moment. A sharp pain pierced her chest, not only because of what Hung was enduring, but also because of the relentless guilt gnawing at her heart. I should never have stepped into your life," she whispered, her voice trembling as if on the verge of tears. Hung turned to her, his eyes red but unwavering. He clasped her hand tightly, so firmly that Hawa could feel both his warmth and his despair. "Don't ever say that. If it weren't for you, I would have fallen apart long ago. You are the reason I can still stand." Those words shattered something inside Hawa. Even in his exhaustion, Hung didn't blame her. Instead, he was comforting her, as if he wanted to shield her from her own self-reproach. That kind of love was so deep that it made her want to do everything, anything, to make it up to him, to soothe the wounds life had carved into him. In the dimly lit, worn-out room, the yellow light cast a warm yet heavy glow over them. Hawa silently vowed to herself, from this moment on, no matter what it took, no matter the cost, she would never leave him. "I promise you," she said softly but firmly, I'll do everything I can to make it up to you. No matter how hard it gets. I won't ever leave you, Hung. Hung simply nodded. He didn't reply, only squeezed her hand tighter, as if it was the deepest gratitude he could give at that moment. The two of them sat there in silence, looking at each other, as if they had found a rare moment of peace after an endless storm. Inside them, there was only one fragile hope left, that Hung's mother was still alive. Even if she had to face the law, as long as she was alive, it wouldn't be the end. As long as there was life, there would still be a chance, for forgiveness, for healing, for a new beginning. As long as my mother's alive, Hung murmured, his voice trembling, that's all I need. In his eyes, there was no anger left for his mother. Only an unbearable guilt and a raw, aching pain at the thought of her, alone in the freezing river. All he wished for was that, no matter how impossible it seemed, she was still out there somewhere, waiting for him to find her. Hawa looked at him, her heart aching but at the same time burning with fierce determination. She knew, this was no longer his battle alone. From this moment forward, she would walk with him to the very end, no matter how dark the road ahead might be. Hung's mother, after hurling herself into the raging river that seemed determined to swallow everything whole, felt the icy water wrap around her body, squeezing the breath from her lungs. In that fleeting moment between life and death, an unyielding survival instinct exploded within her. She kicked and thrashed against the current, her hands flailing desperately in the darkness, until her fingers finally brushed against a thick tree branch jutting out over the riverbank, like a lifeline sent from the heavens. She clung to it with all her strength, her numb, trembling fingers turning purple from the cold. The current battered her relentlessly, but her will to live anchored her hands in place. Wave after wave slammed into her, but she gritted her teeth, enduring every agonizing second that stretched on like eternity. Then, by sheer luck, she saw a styrofoam box drifting toward her, likely lost from some passing boat. With what little strength she had left, she pushed herself toward it and clutched it desperately, her final lifeline in a world that wanted to drown her. With that fragile piece of hope, she floated, carried helplessly by the merciless river. The night dragged on endlessly, until a sudden wave struck and threw her toward the riverbank. Exhausted to the point of collapse, she crawled onto the damp earth, coughing violently, gasping for air as if each breath might be her last. But before her trembling legs could even steady her, one thought burned in her mind: she had to run. She knew there was no going back. Her son, Hung, would never forgive her for what she had done. The police would never let her go. And so, when she saw the distant glow of flashlights from the search team sweeping the riverbank, she shivered, not from the cold, but from fear. In a desperate act, she stripped off her soaked coat and hurled it near the water's edge. Then, with trembling hands, she pulled out every piece of identification she carried and placed them beside it. She left them there deliberately, a false trail, a final clue, to make the world believe she was gone forever, swallowed by the river's depths. When it was done, she turned back to the river one last time. Tears mingled with the icy rain sliding down her face. In her eyes was a pain so deep it was almost unbearable, pain for her son, for her fate, and for the path of sin she had carved for herself. Without a word, she turned away, her bare, wounded feet carrying her into the suffocating darkness. Each step dragged her deeper into the night. Behind her, the river roared on, washing away every trace of truth, and before her, there was only one path left: flight. She knew it well. From this moment on, she was no longer a mother. She was prey, a fugitive. But no matter what, she had to live. Because only if she lived, would there be the smallest, faintest chance that one day, she might look upon her son again. When Hung's mother's soaked coat and identification papers were discovered by the riverbank, the investigation team immediately sealed off the area. Flashlights swept back and forth along the water's edge while motorboats combed the cold, relentless current. Hùng stood there, his fists clenched so tightly his knuckles turned white, the blood nearly drained from his hands. He couldn't believe it, no, he refused to believe what was right in front of him. But even though he was a police officer, a man who had seen countless tragedies in his line of duty, in that moment, he was nothing more than a son. And all he wished for was that this was nothing but a nightmare, so that when he woke up, his mother would still be alive. Beside him, Hawa stood silently, her tear-reddened eyes fixed on him. She didn't speak. She simply held his hand, quietly sharing the weight of his grief. And then, just when despair seemed absolute, a strange discovery shifted everything. There were no signs that a body had been swept away by the current. In fact, the traces of muddy footprints on the nearby bank suggested something entirely different, that she might have walked away on her own. That single detail cut through the darkness like the faintest glimmer of hope. Hùng froze. If it were true, if his mother was still alive, then nothing was over yet. He lifted his head, a spark of determination igniting in his eyes. No matter how much it tore at his heart, he knew what he had to do. He was not only her son, he was a police officer. He couldn't turn away. He would track her down. He would face the truth, no matter how painful it was. And deep down, he clung to one fragile hope, that when this was all over, when there was no place left to run, maybe, just maybe, his mother would awaken. Maybe she would confront her sins. And most of all, maybe she would finally see that Hawa was not her enemy, but the woman who loved her son. Where would this pursuit lead Hùng? Could he find his mother before it was too late? And above all, after all the suffering, could a mother's heart truly change? Could it forgive? Could it learn to love, to heal, and to finally accept the daughter-in-law she once despised? This is only the beginning. Stay tuned for the next episodes to uncover the truth, and to see whether love, faith, and the will to mend what's broken can triumph over the darkness of hatred.
Xin chào tất cả mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình. Hôm nay thì hiện tại mình đang chỉnh sửa và edit video. Mình sẽ đưa đến mọi người video về nội dung mới nhất của diễn biến câu chuyện giữa mẹ đơn thân Lý Hoài Ca. Như mọi người cũng đã biết thì mẹ đơn thân Lý Hoài Ca và cảnh sát Hùng hiện tại đang rơi vào một cái tình trạng rất là oái oăm. Đó là sự việc mẹ của Hùng vì trốn tránh trách nhiệm trước pháp luật đã quyết định nhảy sông. Và điều đó khiến Hùng vô cùng đau khổ. Và ngoài ra thì khiến cho Hoài Ca vô cùng tự trách, vì cô nghĩ là bắt nguồn của mọi đau khổ đều là do sự xuất hiện của cô, và tình yêu của cô dành cho Hùng đã khiến cho mẹ anh không ưng, dẫn đến hậu quả như thế này. Tuy nhiên thì hai người vẫn đang kiên trì yêu thương và ở bên nhau, và phát hiện một cái thi thể ở bờ sông. Cũng rất may mắn là khi Hùng đến nhận dạng thì không phải mẹ của Hùng, và mẹ của Hùng lại đang tiếp tục trên con đường lẩn tránh tội của mình. Mọi chuyện sẽ diễn ra như thế nào? Mời mọi người đón xem ở phần tiếp theo ở ngày mai nha.